I just want to live. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 157 of the Shower Podcast, the podcast where I'm temporarily in Thailand and you do you. I'm your host, Chip, and today, in our 6th episode of our mini-series, we're stepping into a period that's probably closer to home than any era we've ever visited so far. The early 20th century, a time of massive change, world wars, new science, and a completely new lens through which to see ourselves, the human mind. Before we start, as usual, if you end up liking this episode and overall like the Shower Podcast, leaving a like and a subscribe really help a lot. It's just one click, but they really make the difference. In the previous episode, we learned that the industrial age has transformed the world. Cities were booming, technology is exploding, and life, especially in the West, is faster, more connected, and more alienating than ever. But beneath the surface of all of that innovation, people are beginning to ask new questions. Why do I act the way I do? Why do I feel things that I don't understand? This is the birth of modern psychology. We start with Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Now, Freud has a complicated legacy. But what's undeniable is this. He was one of the first people to suggest that much of who we are exists beneath the surface, in the subconscious. Repressed memories, childhood trauma, internal conflict. Freud believed that understanding these hidden forces were the key to healing and to personal growth. Freud's method, talk therapy, or what he called the talking cure, gave us the idea that self-reflection could actually be therapeutic, that speaking your truth could be transformative. Even today, the most common advice in any self-improvement space is talk to someone. Freud helped make that idea mainstream. But Freud wasn't the only voice. His student and eventual rival, Carl Jung, took the idea of the unconscious in a bit more of a spiritual direction. Jung gave us concepts like shadow self, archetypes, and individuation. The process of becoming your most whole, authentic self by confronting and integrating all parts of your personality. For Jung, personal growth wasn't just about fixing what's broken. It was about becoming complete. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That hits hard. It's a reminder that the parts of ourselves we ignore, our fears, our insecurities, even our talents, are often the ones running the show. While Freud and Jung were working on the inside, the outside world was falling apart. World War I, followed by the Great Depression, and then World War II, turned the first half of the 20th century into one of the most violent, chaotic periods in the human history. So, here's the question. What does self-improvement look like in a type of global trauma? For many, survival became the only goal. But even in that darkness, the question of meaning persisted. This is where we meet Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist. Frankl endured years in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He lost his parents, his brother, and his pregnant wife. And yet, in the midst of unimaginable suffering, he made a simple but profound observation. Those who survived were often the ones who found meaning. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, 1946, became one of the most influential psychological texts of the 20th century. Frankl wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That line alone is a masterclass in resilience." Frankl founded logotherapy, a therapeutic approach that centered on meaning as the primary driver of human growth. Not pleasure, like Freud thought, or power, like Adler believed, but purpose. And honestly, that still holds up. Purpose is at the heart of almost every self-improvement journey. Meanwhile, in a very different part of the world, another voice was rising, Mahatma Gandhi. A lawyer, a spiritual seeker, a political leader, and arguably one of the most disciplined individuals in modern history. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence wasn't just political. It was deeply personal. He practiced what he called Swaraj, or self-rule. And again, not just politically, but within. Gandhi believed that self-control, humility, and truthfulness were the foundations of any real progress. He wrote, "You may never know what results come out of your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no result." And that's the heart of it. Progress isn't always measurable, but it's always possible, especially if it starts from within. So, in a world shaken by bombs, grief, and uncertainty, voices like Frankl and Gandhi reminded people of something essential. You still have a choice. You still have agency, even when you don't have control. And that is where self-improvement becomes something more than just better habits. It becomes survival, dignity, and resistance. So far, we've explored how people like Freud, Jung, Gandhi, and Viktor Frankl helped redefine personal growth, not as something you do when life is easy, but as something you need when life is anything but that. Now, let's talk about what happened next. The end of World War II brought a deep sense of relief, but also a deep sense of rebuilding. Not just buildings, not just nations, but lives, identities, and beliefs. In that vacuum, the idea of self-improvement as intentional growth started to crystallize into a global conversation. One of the first people to pick up this thread was Abraham Maslow. You probably know him from the hierarchy of needs, the little pyramid we all saw in school. But here's the real insight. Maslow argued that once people had their basic needs met, food, shelter, safety, they started to crave something more, something deeper. He actually called it self-actualization. And that phrase, it quietly changed everything. Maslow studied extraordinary people, Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, even people he just knew personally, who seemed to live with purpose, creativity, humility, and joy. He found that self-actualization wasn't about being perfect. It was about becoming your most fully self. His message was, it's okay to want more, but not more stuff, more you. He said, what a man can be, he must be. It's not pressure, it's permission. Another figure we can't ignore is Carl Rogers, a psychologist who believed that unconditional positive regard, being truly accepted by another human, was essential for growth. He saw personal development not as fixing what's broken, but as peeling away layers of fear and expectation to let the real person emerge. And in that spirit, we see the start of something else. The idea that mental health is personal growth. That's actually huge. Because for centuries, the focus was either on morality, be good, or survival, get by. Now, there was room to ask, am I fulfilled? Am I authentic? Am I at peace with myself? But let's zoom out again. Because alongside these psychological shifts, the new world was changing fast. New technologies, growing economies, but also deep existential uncertainty, especially after the invention of the atomic bomb. The feeling that life could end any day added urgency to the question, what is worth living for? And from this tension came a whole range of responses. You had people diving into existentialism like Sartre and Albert Camus, who said, essentially, life has no inherent meaning, so it's up to you to create one. That's not hopeless, it's freeing. It's the same energy you see in modern minimalism or even quiet quitting. If everything is absurd, I choose what matters. Meanwhile, in spiritual traditions, there was a return to inner practices. People were reading Eastern philosophy, exploring meditation, and beginning to see that improvement didn't always mean doing more. It could also mean being more present, being more aware, being more honest. And that, I think, is what this whole period taught us. That resilience, it's not just about endurance, it's meaning. And that self-improvement is not just about climbing a ladder, it's making sense of where you're climbing to. So, let's sum it up. From the 1900s to 1945, humanity went through some of its darkest hours. But in that darkness, we discovered light in places we hadn't looked before. The unconscious, the spirit, the will to meaning. We started to understand that growth isn't always about success. It's about making peace with who you are and who you can become, even when the world falls apart. In our next episode, we'll enter the post-war world, where prosperity and peace gave rise to ambition, psychology became mainstream, and the idea of self-actualization became a cultural obsession. So, as always, if you ended up liking this episode, leaving a like and a subscribe really help. And also feel free to leave me a comment letting me know if you end up liking this more podcast, real podcast oriented episodes. Having said that, that was all for today. And as usual, stay consistent, stay resilient, and see you tomorrow.